My mother abandoned me, so I exposed her lies to her rich ex-husband and achieved final victory. I have lived with my mother since I was 13 years old, and I was 16 when my father died. My parents were never married, but they had a plan for my life. I was to spend half the month with my father and the other half with my mother. After my mother died, my father never had any serious relationships, even if he did. I didn't know about it, but my mother had a new boyfriend every 3 months, and as a child, it was hard for me to adapt. I'm not shaming her, it's just that as a child, I didn't like it. 3 years ago, my father died in an accident, and since then, I've been living with my mother. Now, she has no child support and has to pay all the bills. I have finally realized what an unpleasant and terrible woman she is. She always belittles me and reminds me how much it cost her to raise me, as if it were my fault. She hates me and I know it, so I try to keep a low profile, but I can't stop existing just to please her. Living with her over the past few years, I have also discovered a few things about my mother. She constantly changes boyfriends and makes herself look as young as possible to attract them to be with her. She pretended to be in her late 20s or early 30s, even though she was now approaching 40, and all her boyfriends were super rich guys who were only with her for her looks. That was fair enough, because she was only with them for their money. Personally, I completely disagreed with that lifestyle, but I couldn't complain, because it was easy for her, and the reality was that the waitress couldn't afford the lifestyle she wanted. All I care about is having food on the table and being able to keep paying for school. That's all. So I spend most of my time alone, and I even got a part-time job recently to make sure I don't have to rely on my mother all the time. A few days ago, I made a mistake and my mother kicked me out of the house. The mistake I made wasn't really a big deal. I accidentally let slip when her new boyfriend was visiting that I was a junior in college. Yes, I should have told her boyfriend that I'm still in my freshman year, so they wouldn't think she's old or something. My mom is so shallow. Her boyfriend didn't make a big deal out of it and didn't seem to care, but after he left, my mom and I had a huge fight and in the end she threw me out. Not only did she throw me out, she told me I was never allowed to come back and now I'm on my own. I can't believe she was so cruel, but that's just how it is. Fortunately, I did have some friends, and I decided to stay at my best friend's house for a night. But in the end, I stayed at my best friend's house. She was the same age as me and had been my friend since kindergarten. I knew I could help her and her family, and they could help me. I also got the emotional support I needed from them and was able to continue going to school. I will be forever grateful to them. I was sad, but at the same time I was angry at my mother for her actions. After my father died, I resented her for many years, and I was never good enough for her. I think she just wanted to get rid of me, so she deliberately had a fight with me so she would have an excuse to throw me out. A teenage daughter could have ruined her whole young and hot role, and she was afraid that once I looked more mature, she would not be able to find a new boyfriend to support herself. I still have a chubby face and it's hard to guess my age, but that won't last forever and I'm tall, thanks to my dad's genes. Anyway, she doesn't want me around, so my missteps are just an excuse for her to get rid of me. Unfortunately, I know she's been trying to hide her last boyfriend, the only one that lasted more than 5 months, and they seem pretty serious. She kept lying to him about her age, but he either didn't realize or didn't care. The guy was head over heels in love with her, even though I could tell he was also very nice to me. I really wish I could have told him to go for it so he could get rid of my mom, because he seemed like a really nice guy. He must have been only 25 or 27, no older than that, and he was rich, which wasn't surprising, because my mom only likes rich guys, and he was the heir to a company. I think my mother even planned to marry him, but they suddenly broke up, and I only found out why recently when I was going through my mother's text messages. We share a laptop, so I often check what my mother is up to. Yes, I'm well aware that this is an invasion of her privacy, but I really don't care. I get bored sometimes, and from time to time I remind myself of what a horrible person my mother actually is. Fortunately, she uses her younger sister as a personal diary, telling her all the little things that happen between them. They're both shallow gold diggers, so she enjoys the process. A few weeks ago, I was going through her texts and started reading about the reason she broke up with her ex-boyfriend. She mentioned that she had taken 10,000 yuan from her boyfriend to buy new clothes and cosmetics for herself, but she told him that the reason she needed 10,000 yuan was that I had apparently been in a car accident and needed surgery. Then she refused to see him for several weeks, started avoiding him, and said that she wanted to be with me and help me recover. Later, he started saying that he wanted to see me, and she broke up with him. She claimed that he was suffocating her and that she needed her own space, and that's how she dumped him. These are her words, not mine. When I read this, I felt so angry because her ex-boyfriend was a good person, and this is how she treated him. Not only did she take a large sum of money from him just to buy herself expensive new clothes and makeup, she also lied to him and didn't even bother to think of a suitable explanation for breaking up with him. I felt terrible, and half the time I wanted to tell him about it, but I was afraid that my mother would somehow find out and throw me out, because she was always trying to get rid of me. But now I'm out anyway, and I have nothing to lose, so 2 days ago I decided to go to her ex-boyfriend's house after school and tell him what my mother had done. I even had proof, because I'd taken a few pictures when I found her chat history, but didn't know I'd ever need it. One day, I found out his address, because I'd been to his house with my mother twice, so when he saw me at the door, it wasn't hard to find him. He looked confused but let me in anyway. I think he was curious, and even though he seemed to be getting on well, he may have moved on after a bit of small talk. I told him everything I knew and even showed him the chat history. I don't know what he'll do, but I'd hate that he'll at least confront my mother, but at the time he just thanked me in a very calm voice for everything I'd done for him and said he'd think about what to do. I was a little frustrated because I thought my mother would get away with it again, and when I got home I felt it was a huge waste of my time and energy. But today I got a few urgent phone calls from my neighbor, saying that her ex-boyfriend had gone to her house with the police and that she had just been arrested. I was really shocked because I didn't think he would actually do anything because he seemed to have given up. I thought I was wrong, and my neighbor told me that my mother had asked them to notify me and wanted I to the police station to help resolve the problem, but I really wasn't interested. Ed didn't want to do it, so I hung up. That's all I want, and I don't feel sorry for her at all, because she helped my mother's ex-boyfriend arrest my mother after she had previously banned me from the house for a mistake I made. Update: my mother was arrested a few days ago, and I guess she made bail or something. I haven't really bothered to check up on her because, like I said, I really don't care. My aunt, my mother's sister, did try to get me to change the way I'm acting, but if anything, it just made me feel like I was doing the right thing. She sent me a few long text messages saying that I was an ungrateful brat and that if my father were alive, he'd be ashamed of me. That woman doesn't even know my father. She's probably only met me once or twice in her life, so she's just trying to get a rise out of me. I think she also guessed that I must have been the one who sent those screenshots to my mom's ex, because she said I betrayed my own mother over something so trivial. I think it's really over the top that she's throwing me out just because I told her new boyfriend my real age. I don't know what she really wants from this. I think they should focus on suing my mom because I'm pretty sure her ex is going to take her to court, otherwise he wouldn't have even bothered involving the police. That's just my guess, but I really hope he does. My mom's life is ruined. Yes, I want my own mother's life to be ruined. I'm a horrible person, but I think she deserves it for everything she's done to me and the way she treats me. She deserves nothing but hatred. I'm just glad that all her sins are catching up to her and now she has to pay the price, literally. I can't believe I let so much slip by just because I needed to live with her. I'm so glad she decided to kick me out because my best friend's parents are actually considering adopting me, and I'm so happy about it, and so is my best friend, who I've come to think of as my sister, so it's perfect. I just hope she doesn't fight when I have to ask her to give up her parental rights. Update: my mom was released on bail, and I guess her ex-husband did sue her. Today she waited for me outside school and asked to talk to me face to face. I didn't want to embarrass her in front of my friends, so I agreed to talk to her. She immediately started with the same nonsense her sister had told me, accusing me of being ungrateful and selfish. Then she said she wanted me to tell her ex that I had made the whole story up and that I had photoshopped the screenshots. To make things difficult for her, she even suggested that I take some photos with my arm in a bandage so that she could convince him that the accident had really happened. I was speechless. She had the nerve to ask me to lie and cover for her. After she had mercilessly thrown me out of the house, she didn't deserve my sympathy. To be honest, I felt better about the shame I had experienced at school than about having to talk to her. I shouldn't have talked to her, but it was done, so I decided to speak in a low voice. If she agreed to let my best friend's parents adopt me and give up her parental rights, I would do what she said. As I expected, she agreed, without a moment's hesitation, and even seemed pleased. I was a little sad that she was finally getting rid of me, but to be honest, I had long expected this day, and I knew it would happen one day. I always knew my mother hated me, even before my father died, and she just wanted me to stay with her so she could keep getting alimony from my father. I always tried to win her approval so she would love me, but all she cared about was her boyfriends and her appearance. It makes me feel so frustrated. As a child, I still feel frustrated that if she wasn't ready to be a mother, she shouldn't have chosen to have me. She clearly wasn't ready. She didn't want to be a mom then, and she still doesn't. It's obvious. You can tell from what I've shared here. I'm so happy that at least now I have a family that really does welcome me, that has always treated me like one of their own, and I know they will be so happy to adopt me. My best friend's dad is also one of the best family lawyers I know, so I know the process will be easy and quick too. Update 3. Hi, I've been living with my best friend and her family for a while now, and to be honest, I feel like I'm in a movie. I have no idea what a family is supposed to feel like. The comfort and love they shower on me is unparalleled. When my father was alive, he would go out of his way to remind me that he loved me whenever I came back from my mother's. Because I felt that he could sense something was wrong, even though I always made sure that no one could see it. Back then, I often wondered if my mother would ever love me, despite all the signs that she wouldn't. The signs were all against it, so I wanted to keep visiting her, but I was disappointed every time, and every time my father did his best to put the pieces of me back together again. After he died, no one wanted to do this for me except my best friend, but we only saw each other at school and sometimes at the weekend. But now I feel like I've found a new family, one that my father would have wanted me to be a part of. And I'm going to make it happen. My best friend's dad has the legal paperwork ready, and if all goes well, they'll be able to adopt me soon. I've also been in touch with my mom and convinced her that I'll make sure her ex-husband leaves her alone. But as I said, I've done nothing. I've just made sure she signs the papers terminating her parental rights first, and then disappears from my life forever. My best friend thinks it's a really clever plan and keeps assuring me it'll definitely work. I've been really worried about all this lately, and although I don't show it at school, my anxiety has reached a peak. My best friend wants me to tell her parents so they can find a therapist and make sure I get the help I need, but I've made her promise not to say a word until I'm ready, because I don't want to burden them. I know I just said a lot about how they've been like family to me, and they have. I also know they won't mind taking me to a therapist, but I don't want to make them feel guilty for running around trying to help me. I know they are all doing a lot for me, and I am both grateful and guilty. I don't know how to deal with so many emotions at the same time, which is why I have been suffering from severe anxiety recently. I just pray that this will end soon. Update 4. My mother signed the papers, and now she is no longer my legal parent. I am very happy about this. She was also very happy to sign the papers and even tried to be friendly with my new adoptive parents, but they didn't respond. They were very cold, so she finally understood. After that, she pulled me aside again and asked me when I was going to tell her ex-husband and put everything back on hold. I didn't want to ruin the day, so I told her I would tell him soon, and she left. I still stand by my decision not to tell her ex-husband anything, and I'm secretly proud of the way I handled the whole situation. I know it was very cunning and mean, but I did what I had to do to get rid of my mom once and for all. I don't think she even regrets what she did. She seems very relieved today, because she knows she's got rid of me for good and now she can live her life her way without having to worry about me. It still stings, but I know it's not my fault now. I may be the best daughter on the planet, but she still wouldn't want me, so at least I'm good, and now I have people around me who really want me, so I've got nothing to lose, and I get to live with my best friend forever. I think she's my real sister now, and it still feels really weird. I can't believe I have a whole new family, and even though I'm still 2 years away from turning 18, I want to make the most of it. We came home that day and decided to celebrate with cake and take away from my favorite restaurant, the perfect end to the perfect day. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with the family I get to choose. Update 5. Hey everyone, I thought the last update would be the last one, but I'm back because some very confusing things have happened recently. After my mother signed the papers, I blocked her everywhere because I didn't want to keep in touch, and I definitely didn't want her to be able to contact me for a few days. Things were going normally, and I didn't hear from her. Then suddenly one day, I got an email from a strange email address reminding me to keep my promise. I immediately knew it had to be my mother, because who else would do something like that? I ignored it, but she started texting me and calling me on other numbers to try and convince me. I wanted to tell my parents, but it still feels weird to say it out loud. I'm trying to get used to it, but I was scared because it also meant I had to explain what I promised my mother in exchange for her signing off without making a fuss. I didn't know how they would take it, so I decided to keep it to myself, but just a few days ago, after school, my mother came to the school to look for me. My best friend and I had planned to walk home, but when I saw her waiting outside, she looked so angry. I didn't know what to do, and I ended up having an anxiety attack right there on the spot. My mother's reappearance meant bad news, and I didn't want to deal with it now. I couldn't think what to do, and I was especially afraid of disappointing my new family with my little prank, so I ran back into the school building while my friend chased after me, and I locked myself in the janitor's storage room and refused to come out. I think I must have fainted from the extreme panic, because the next thing I remember is being carried out of the storage room by my best friend's dad, while her mom and the headmaster watched. When I got home, it was already dark, and they told me to go to bed. They didn't sound angry, but they also didn't sound happy, so I was really nervous. But I fell asleep after a while because I was mentally exhausted. When I woke up the next morning for breakfast, my family sat me down and told me that my best friend had already told them everything, and they assured me that they weren't angry with me. They were just worried about me. I was actually a little relieved because I was tired of keeping the secret. Thank God, my best friends thought my happiness was more important than keeping the secret and decided to tell, because after we decided to apply for a restraining order against my mother, they told me they thought I was totally right to try to manipulate my mother to get what I wanted. In fact, they even thought it was clever, because I had just used her game against her and she was now powerless against it. So I was glad they weren't disappointed by what I'd done. Anyway, we applied for a restraining order against my mother. I hope I can get a longer restraining order against my mother because I don't want to see her around me anymore. She always brings me bad emotions and will continue to do so. I've had enough of her. We are also looking for a psychologist around because I need to deal with a lot of emotions considering my past. I'm so glad I finally got the help I needed. I will always be grateful to my best friend and my new family for reminding me what love and family are all about. I'm sure my father would be happy for me now too. Next story 2X abandoned our newborn daughter and disappeared after 3 years. She wants to come back into my life. My ex-girlfriend 26F and I first went out 6 years ago, and from day one we got along like peas and carrots. After 2.5 years together, she got pregnant. We had talked about children before, and we both wanted a family, but after 2 years together, we stopped talking about it. We often consulted with friends who already had children and finally decided to have a child. We also agreed that even if our relationship didn't last, the happiness of the child would always come first. Before the lockdown in 2020, 3 weeks before the due date, we welcomed a perfect little girl, and we were both completely smitten with her. It was a big adjustment, but our girl was an angel, and we quickly settled into parenthood. At first, everything was fine, but after 3 months, everything changed. I was working overtime that day when my mother texted me to tell me that my girlfriend had handed her daughter over to her and gone out to run an errand, but she hadn't returned after 4 hours and wasn't answering her phone. I called too, but she didn't answer. I went to pick up my daughter after work and found my girlfriend. She said she couldn't handle the lockdown and the stress of a baby and that she needed some time to sort things out. She also said not to call, that we'd talk soon. But a few days turned into weeks, and apart from her sister, who visited her niece regularly, my girlfriend never mentioned me. I had no contact with her or anyone. It's been almost 3 years now, and my ex-girlfriend slowly started contacting me again. At first it was slow, liking photos and comments of our daughter on Instagram, but then last week she texted me saying she saw our daughter, and I was doing well, and asked if we could meet. I was reluctant, but we had agreed before our daughter was born that her happiness was the most important thing. So I reluctantly agreed to meet her for coffee and let her see our daughter. But now I'm having second thoughts. How can I forgive her for leaving me, and more importantly, our daughter? Update: as we had agreed, my ex-wife and I met at a local cafe a few days ago. I arrived early to try to think of what I would say to her after 3 years. Although I hadn't mentioned it initially, I had no intention of bringing our daughter. My ex-wife had the contact details of my family, so she was with a colleague. When my ex-wife arrived, she was a little disappointed, but not surprised to see me alone. The next few minutes were spent mostly small talk, and we eventually got to the elephant in the room. She had been hiding for 3 years, our life as doctors, and she admitted that she had suffered from postpartum depression and that she couldn't bear to show it in front of our girl. She admitted that the way she left was wrong, but she wanted to be able to focus on herself while receiving treatment. I asked her why it took 3 years for her to resurface, and she sent a text for our daughter's first birthday, but it was, and she broke down admitting that she was terrified of my opinion of her disappearance. She had reason to be afraid, because while I could accept being abandoned, I was furious that she had left our daughter throughout the conversation. I could see that she had grown up a lot over the past few years, and that was the topic of our conversation for over an hour. When I finally got up to leave, she asked what our position was. I told her that I appreciated that she had been trying to change, but that it would take time for me to let go completely. But as a sign of my sincerity, I showed her a video of our daughter, which was about 6 or 7 months old, but it was my favorite video of my daughter and my dad calling out to each other as a cow. I got her phone number so we can keep in touch properly, not via social media, and I agreed to send her a few photos of our daughter. I really appreciate all the advice I received last time, and I would like to know what the future holds for me and my ex. I hope we can coexist peacefully for the sake of our daughter and maintain a healthy friendship, but after what happened before, it's hard for me to trust my ex completely. What do you think? P.S. There are 2 things I haven't told my ex. First, I have absolutely no intention of getting back together. If she can prove that she won't disappear again, I'm willing to co-parent, but that's it. I used to love her very much, but I'm not the same person anymore. The ship has sailed. At one point, I considered giving our daughter up for adoption when she was about 9 months old. I was mentally and emotionally exhausted. I was under a lot of pressure at work, and I didn't feel like going home to see my daughter, even though I loved her very much. I was in the process of adopting her, but one night, as I watched her sitting in her stroller, she looked back at me with a cute little smile on her face, her blue eyes shining. It was as if she was telling me that I was her whole world, and that told me everything would be okay. So I canceled the adoption and never looked back. Update: it's been a few weeks now, and I'd like to give an update on my ex-wife's progress. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for their advice and support. It's been a huge help. Anyway, regarding my ex-wife's request, I accompanied her to her therapist, and she assured me that she's made good progress with my ex-wife, but she still has some issues to work out. Specifically, it's her relationship with her parents. She told me that they're separated, and her mother has a bad temper, but I'm not sure how bad it really is. After the session, my ex-wife left, and I hesitated to ask her therapist about reintroducing myself to my ex-husband. She advised against it for the time being and offered me a free consultation to talk about it. so I will go to see her next week with a more positive attitude. My daughter started kindergarten 2 weeks ago, has already made friends, and is very much in love with life. I sent my ex-husband a few pictures of our daughter to show my support. So things are getting better. Thanks again to everyone who has posted comments so far. The support I have received is incredible and makes the hardships of raising a child on my own a little better.